69 of 20 Minute Tims. I'm your host Jamie, and I am joined by Stephen.
Buzzing to be here, guys. Buzzing.
Oh, it's not as warm as it usually is in the studio. Melly.
Yes.
And before we do anything else, we have to promote our Patreon. Just want to say thank you to absolutely everyone who has joined us on YouTube. The response since we joined YouTube has been frankly ridiculous. And we just want to let you guys know and anyone else listening about our Patreon. The reason you see us on YouTube here is because we are supported by our patrons. Patreon.com/20minutetims. The address will come up here, and it's in the programme notes for this YouTube video. You can join our Patreon from $2.50 a month up to about £7 or £9 a month, depending on how you want to pay. And in exchange for your support, you get hours and hours of additional content, podcasts, writing, blogs. Most recently, we've added a collaboration with the fantastic Celtic Fans TV YouTube channel. We are doing at the match reactions on the video as well as podcast reactions. So that's patreon.com/20minutims. And it,
probably put an address in here, won't we?
down there, Stephen, I think is what we're going to do. And also, whilst you're down there trying to find the Patreon, hit subscribe. I don't know why. A lot of people
Please
say,
do it. Yeah,
everyone says subscribe.
Smash that button and all that, sort of stuff. Yeah.
I really don't know why you need people to subscribe to your YouTube, but do it anyway. Melly, pronounce Celtic/European opponent for us.
Jablonec.
Stephen, are you happy with that? Is that passable?
It's better, isn't
right.
it? Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Condescending wank. He never says it to my face. It's always in the group chat.
In the Discord.
Always in the Discord. Always, which is another Patreon benefit. You can slag Melly in the Discord. Right. Jablonec. First of all, full house.
Somewhat.
Yes. I took a bit of issue with full house. Typical Celtic. So pleased to have all the fans back. I took my seat, and then there was just an empty stand right in front of me. Almost a complete empty stand, and it did feel a bit weird.
Would it look brilliant from that stand, though, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah.
So you would get the full stand experience if you were looking at us, but unfortunately we had to look at an empty stand, which is down to kind of inexplicable
UEFA
regulations
rules
and stuff
or
like
something.
that.
I heard it was to do with UEFA rules, but Melly, it was 97% the Celtic Park experience, wasn't it?
Oh, it was brilliant, and me and Stephen went along, and just going back, and it felt normal again. It just felt like this was it. We were finally getting in there, because we've been to games and there's been crowds, but nothing like this. And you're back in your normal seat, seeing everybody around you, and even getting to the Hearts game on Sunday, like it just felt like you'd sort of never been away. Everybody was just it just felt like it hadn't happened. So it was good to be back, and even better, the Hoops put on a show.
They certainly did, Stephen.
Yeah, to echo Emily's sentiments there, it was strange going to it. It was quite strange because I wasn't really sure what it was going to be like. I had been back, but the 9,000 doesn't really count. That was great to get back, but it wasn't the full experience. And I've never really known of a game at this stage of the season where it's a kind of run of the mill European qualifier against a not particularly storied opposition where everybody was absolutely buzzing for it during the day. It was there was so much hype going into the game just because, it's been so long. Some people hadn't been lucky enough to get anything in the ballot, so there were people who hadn't been back at all to this point. But it was like there was so much build up to it. It was almost like the playing of the 90 minutes became secondary. I would liken it to if you go to like a festival or something like that, you have such a good time in the campsite, you kind of forget that's not what you paid your money for, and you kind of go to that next day. So it was a weird experience, but brilliant. And as Melly said, it was amazing how quickly it went from this is weird to just as if you'd never been away. It was like, as soon as the song started, and oh boy, did the song start! Anyway, I said to Melly, I'm not going to put a name on it here. I said to Melly after the game, I was like, was it just me? Have I been away so long? Or was that heavy on the old songs?
As if it was only him that heard it. I was like, Stephen, everybody was...
No, there was a lot of cultural songs, and I was absolutely there for it.
No, I didn't say as if it was only me that heard it. I thought, is that just my perception? Is it always like this, or is this particularly heavy on the old songs of freedom?
We did request full send, and we more or less got full send. What I liked about it as well, though, I don't know if it was just my perception, but there was an element of before the game that, even for the fans, we need to make this as good as we possibly can. We need to make it for Ange. We need to show these players what they've been missing a wee bit and try and shout the game into life, shout these players into life, and the players responded to it.
Yeah, they did, and even just touching on the Hearts game quickly, when I got to my seat at the Hearts game, I had a look around. There was more people at the Hearts game than there was at of the game on Thursday just because they could. But usually a League Cup game where you have to pay, you might think people just take it off. But it seems like everybody's buying into this. Everybody's getting along. Everybody's desperate to watch Celtic play. And you can see why with the two performances. They were brilliant. And I think the fans are completely on board with it here. Everybody was in a good mood on Thursday. Celtic put in the performance again, and it just seems like everybody's behind Celtic now. We just need a couple of weeks, get a couple more players in, and we're going to be good for the season.
The performances in the last two games have been absolutely outrageous. Now I've got some things I want to talk about, but I don't think we're going to go down the old route of talking and describing the goals. We're just going to talk about the performances as a whole, single out a few players that we want to talk about that have performed well for the last couple of weeks. But we can't talk about the fans and the response the fans got without talking about the response that Joe Hart got for the fans for making those two saves.
Yeah, anyone who would have heard our reaction to it, we did the At The Match podcast for it, of course, myself and Melly, and Melly remarked on it that we don't sit beside each other, I sit slightly in front and to the right of Melly, and he said after it, I got out my seat 4 times in the game, so 3 goals and one was when Joe Hart made that second save, I think it was. And seeing it back, I kind of wondered about this at the time. Seeing it back, they look like 2 saves you should be making, right? I mean, one was better than the other. The point blank volley was a pretty impressive save. The first one was just it just got his hands to it. But in a way, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that they were routine saves. What was important was the response that elicited in the stadium. What was important was that the fans are fully buying into this guy who had a mixed reception when he signed for Celtic, because everyone's a bit kind of Joe Hart of maybe 5 or 6 years ago, but no now. But we've been talking about keepers endlessly for seasons now, for at least 2 seasons now, and
I've missed saves. I've missed saves more than goals.
Exactly.
That's fucking
what Joe Hart got after that save was no different, or would have been no different, rather, in my opinion, to if Barkas had done the same thing. The trouble is he hasn't done that, right? I mean, we have been fully behind Barkas in the stadium when we went to the Midtjylland game. Anytime he was coming out and just claiming any cross, any routine cross, people were getting right behind him and cheering him and all that. But the problem is, there's no way he would have saved that. And I know that sounds terribly harsh, but there's no evidence.
It's been so long since I've seen a save, right?
Yeah.
See, when Joe Hart touched that with his hands, I was like, are you allowed to do that?
Yes.
Is he allowed?
Apparently.
Are you allowed to touch with your hand? Oh, you're allowed to touch with your hands, Melly.
Yeah, they were decent saves, but the thing I liked about them was they were quite point blank and they were quick shots, so it was reactions from him, and you're just sort of expecting. Most of the time recently we've seen that, there's another goal, that's it, and maybe would have taken something away from it, but it just shows you, look, it takes a lot for Celtic to get a clean sheet now, because defence has been a bit patchwork recently. We haven't had the goalkeeper, but that just shows you what a difference a goalkeeper can make. Look, Celtic would have won that game no matter what. They would have went through in the tie, but keeping 2 clean sheets in a row was quite important, and it sort of gives you that confidence. That we've seen Barkas, we've seen Bain. I can't remember Barkas ever making a significant save. I've already seen a couple from Joe Hart in a couple of games, and look, Celtic dominate a lot of games, so there won't be a lot for him to do, but when he was called upon, he did exactly what you ask a keeper. It's not hard. This is the way it should be.
We've been battered down by low expectations.
Wildly celebrating any routine saves, but have you seen the video that was doing the rounds a few days ago of Barkas involved in a shooting drill?
Yeah.
Now, that was framed a bit unfairly. To anyone who hasn't seen it, it's a video taken from the stand of Barkas taking part in what looked like a goalkeeping drill, and he just wasn't going for any ball. He was at best sticking his foot out, and the ball would hit his foot and go into the top corner.
I was trying to so that was, as you say, that was a shooting drill. I just don't know why the goalkeeper was there.
I know. Why just?
Is he just there to pick the ball out the net or something?
I don't know, but it turned out it wasn't as bad as it initially seemed. But the trouble with that is, if anyone sees that kind of thing, people are just going to go, well, obviously that's how he plays anyway. It just stands there like a fridge with eyes in the middle of the game. So it's a relief. I mean, Joe Hart has had he's had these shaky moments as well, and we're going to obviously talk about his use of the ball with his feet, which is less than ideal. But to have come in and made 2, let's face it, quite important saves. The game was comfortable in the end, but you don't really want to let them in under any circumstances at all, if you can at all avoid it.
Were you concerned about the... I mean, when I was at the game, there was a couple of things I noted from Joe Hart. 1, with the saves, obviously. 2, with the ball at his feet, and we're going to talk about that. And 3, we can talk about... There was a couple of times where he bollocked Starfield for making an arse or something. Absolutely bollocked him, and then Starfield apologised and all that. And that was good to see someone with a bit of command and presence in the box. But so I was watching the game, watching him with the ball at his feet, and I thought, one, he was involved in a lot. He was getting the ball quite a lot. He was coming for it, and he was getting involved in the sort of passing the ball from side to side. There was nothing too challenging. His long kicking was okay, not brilliant. But then when I came back and I read the online and did the old Twitter reaction, I thought, did I watch a different game? Because everyone's like, well, it's pretty obvious Joe Hart can't play with his feet. And I thought, I don't know if it's that obvious. I don't know if he's that bad.
There was a couple where he really did look poor on it and just didn't look comfortable, but it's
early days for him as well, isn't it? In this system?
But it wasn't as if they were like hard passes. There was points in the game where, look, opponents weren't great, but they did press Celtic a lot more than any teams will in Scotland, and there was points where Celtic had to go longer with the kicks, and that's where it sort of fell down a bit. So
I thought when we just on that going longer, I thought it was weird that the target for the long high ball seemed to be Furuhashi, who's 5'7". I thought that was odd from us. I don't know if we've maybe not worked on how to best do that yet, but I thought that was a bit of a strange one.
Yeah, well, the three guys up top were all small, and even at the midfield, you've not got any winners in there for like high balls, but it made me think that maybe going forward and say the Alkmaar game and that, we might be better having Callum McGregor and Sorrow McCarthy there, two sitters, so they can drop deep, and then we've got maybe 4 or 6 players to hit rather than just McGregor sitting with Rogic and Turnbull in front of him, because then it will give us more options back there. Because when we did go long, that's when it sort of fell down a bit. We are good at playing it out, but when we were pressed right in there, we sort of struggled a bit, and that's where it sort of looked a wee bit poor from Joe Hart. But it's no a look, goalkeeper, even the going back, Craig Gordon done it all the time under Brendan Rodgers, but you don't really remember it. It's not as if it was costing us any chances.
The difference with it being early days with Joe Hart, and it is the difference is though that it's early days and fully expected from him. If that's the fear going in that he can't play with his feet in his first few games or like that, then it's kind of to be expected, I suppose. But in a way, people are going to jump on that because 1 or 2 of them were bad. But the thing is, this is the way Ange Postecoglou and Celtic are going to play. So really, what we need to do is everyone needs to buy into it, including the fans. And I know that's difficult because the players will buy into it, but the fans need to kind of relax on that kind of thing. It was troublesome at times with Craig Gordon, but what I would say the difference between Craig Gordon and a couple of those defenders back then, Boyata and all that, is that everyone at least looks confident in trying to deliver it rather than panicky. Craig Gordon just looked terrified every time the ball came to his feet.
And number one sweeper keeper, Craig Gordon.
And I think what I said at the time is that Craig Gordon, whether you're a keeper or not, the way you receive the ball, you should look like any other player effectively. Now I know he's not a midfielder, but he should make the right kind of body shapes or the right drop his weight down and look to pass the ball. Craig Gordon was like bolt upright the entire time, and he would just swing his leg at it and it would go out for a throw in. So what I would say is that players look confident. This style of play will break down once, twice, maybe even 3 times a game, but no one really ever talks about the 10, 12 times where it does work, and all of a sudden you play it from the back, you suck the press in, and all of a sudden Rogic is on the half turn and you're breaking away.
Happened a lot.
Yeah, it happened several times. So there is a lot of negativity surrounding that style of play because it looks terrifying when you're there. But I think people need to relax with it a wee bit and let everyone develop into it.
David Turnbull, Melly, got on the score sheet twice in the match, got on the score sheet twice. Again, I thought David Turnbull had one of his quieter games, but managed to pitch up with 2 great goals.
I thought it was Turnbull's best game of the season so far. He's slowly been building up. His performances have been getting better, and I thought in this game there's maybe been some doubts about Turnbull, whether he can do it at the higher level or if he's going to be Celtic's man going forward in that position. But I think he answered a lot of questions there. He looked a class above against a fairly decent European team, and his 2 goals were great. But I thought he's just really coming into the formation, the way he plays, the way he can receive the ball in the turn. His passing was great, and the 2 finishes were unbelievable. We want to see more from him. We know he can hit shots from far out, but it was good to see him getting in there when Greg Taylor slips him through. Again, with the formation we play, that's what we want. It was a good run, a good spot from Taylor, and a good finish from Turnbull. You want to see him getting more goals inside the box, because he can do it from outside the box, as we've seen later in the game, but if he's getting in there, making those third-man runs, it'll cause his teams more problems. And I thought this was the game where I thought, right, Turnbull's arrived this season, because I think Ange said after the game he's been annoyed at himself because he's not scored yet this season, so look, I like that about players. He's got targets he wants to hit himself, and I think Thursday night we really seen the true David Turnbull.
2 great goals, 2 very satisfying in different ways. Goals. The second one was very David Turnbull. I thought the way he just kind of get his body over it and smashed into the bottom corner. We've seen that from him a lot. I mean, we can talk about last season's wild shooting, but Turnbull was always slightly better, slightly more accurate, a wee bit more controlled than Christie when it was at its worst last season. But the first goal, as you already said, Greg Taylor, great ball. But the finish was...
It's Kyogo.
It's a Kyogo. I mean, I immediately thought Romario, but that's because I'm old. Like people will be like, "Who's
Is that why you've got that Brazil top?
People will be like, watching this YouTube generation, be like, Romario. Oh wait, he's in his 50s. Don't need to look too far into that. But that's immediately who I thought of. That just a lovely wee, almost like a wee poke under the on-rushing keeper. But yeah, now that he's back, I can only do wonders for his confidence, let's face it. I mean, this team is getting better and better, and we'll talk about the circumstances of the Hearts game, of course, coming up, but the team has very much grown into itself, and both of these games that we're going to talk about this week, the first half hour first half hours rather of both games, among the best football I've seen for years for Celtic. Now, maybe I'm just a wee bit kind of damaged after last season, of course, because we've not enjoyed a Celtic game for what seems like about 2 years, but phenomenal in the first half an hour.
Every time I'm watching Celtic just now, especially in the opening, half of these games, opening 30, 45 minutes of that games, all I hear in my head is that mic top Ange. We don't fucking stop. If they want to stop, good. We take advantage of it, but we don't fucking stop. And I'm like, that's what it's like. Watching this Celtic team chase, I mean, Furuhashi, relentlessly chasing people down up front. Even players like Tom Rogic now. Listen, this podcast is going to be relentlessly positive, right?
Yeah.
But I do remember, Stephen, as you pointed out, to his pre-match, pre-podcast 9 months ago, we released a podcast talking about y'all must have forgot.
He got the official y'all must have forgot last season. Yes, he did.
Tommy Rogic got the old y'all must have forgot and then went... like his performance has just disappeared. But even players like Tom Rogic coming back into the fold, that midfield 3, McGregor, Rogic and David Turnbull, you're like, dynamism, they've got everything.
I actually turned to you, Mel, at one point and said, "But Tommy's chasing the ball down." He was like pulling players back and all that. I was like, "Where's this been?" But I mean, we'd maybe discussed before the game as well about how there are some managers who know Tom Rogic really well. Postecoglou's probably third behind Neil Lennon and Brendan Rodgers. No one else will know Tom Rogic any better. So who better to get a tune out of him than this guy? I was as surprised as anyone to see him. At the time of the Jablonec game, it was 2, but now 3 games. He started 3 games recently, and I probably wouldn't have got that last season. I don't know if he would have done that the entirety of the last 2 seasons. So, yeah, I mean, I'm all for him. I'm changing my mind as a couple of decent results will always do. It will always make you more positive. If nothing but a flip-flopper when it comes to these things. But again, much like we discussed last week with Ralston, I think Tom Rogic has earned the right for me to be like, well, a few weeks ago I wanted you gone because I thought you were completely finished, but now I'm like, well, he can obviously contribute when he fancies it.
But there's a snap to our play at the moment, Mel, as you say. As soon as the opposition team lose the ball, 1, 2, 3 passes and we're off causing danger. Furuhashi's sort of drifting offside, just waiting for the opposition team to play him on side, make these smart runs. We've got cutbacks and tap-ins. Stephen's favourite. It's all go.
It isn't like Rogic maybe symbolises that because he's a guy you don't expect to do that, but he's doing it here, and we know if you don't buy into this, you don't do what Ange is asking you won't play. And the fact that he's playing shows he is doing that. Kyogo up front, he is just the main man up there. You can tell. I don't know what his English is like, but he's directing things behind him. Him and Rogic are usually pressing together, and he's telling Rogic, "You go and I'll go." And
language of football, Melly. That's what he's speaking.
It's telepathic, isn't it? It was brilliant to watch, and as you say, the first half, we overwhelm teams, we blow them away. It's exhilarating. They don't give them a second, and if you're doing that, and they're harder the better teams we play, of course, but we've not met that great teams yet. But when we're playing against teams who are inferior to us, they'll not be able to handle that. The pressing, the passing, the movement, the tempo, all your favourites. Teams can't handle it, and we've got the better players. So if we can do that, we're going to carve teams open, because as soon as we lose the ball, we're trying to win it back. And when we do have the ball, the passing is so quick, so incisive that teams can't get back in, and we absolutely shred them. Look, this was 3-0, Hearts was scored 3. Could have easily been 6 in both of the games, like the Dundee game was. Well,
the intensity is dropping off in these games, so that's bound to happen. I mean, it's not caught up with us just yet. Hearts game got more tricky than it should have been eventually, just looking at the score line. But I don't think that really reflected the performance. But
It's kind of what Ange touched on as well, isn't it? About relying on the same core of players all the time.
Exactly my point. We just need a stronger, more capable squad. That's what we need, because we're using the same players over and over again, and we won't have to keep going to the well throughout the whole season for the same 13 or 14 players. That's the answer to that. The answer to the dip in intensity is just fresh legs. I mean, it sounds like the most obvious thing in the world, but that's what it's going to be at the end of the day.
We seen that in a bit in the second half when we brought on Beaton and Sorrow ended up midfield, and that's when Celtic sort of lost the control in there, wasn't it? And it sort of faded out. But the game was well won by them. But but then at the weekend you've seen James McCarthy come on, so it just shows you one player in each position just increases the strength and depth we have, and it's going to be good, interesting to see where we end up when this transfer window shuts, because the way we're playing with players who maybe aren't the best now in certain positions, if Ange gets all the players in the positions he wants and we are going to go forward playing like this, it is going to be very exciting.
That's it. You're looking at this and going, make this happen.
This is just the start.
Celtic will make this happen, right? And I just want to, we spoke a lot last season, right? I'm still haunted by last season. I've got PTSD for last season, right? Okay, I've got PTSD from it. I saw a man chewing snus in the street the other day. I had like Vietnam flashbacks, like fucking Manchurian Candidate or something, right? So we've got a lot to worry. We've got a lot to worry about, right? And I remember last season we would beat teams in the bottom six. We'd beat teams in the bottom six and go, right, maybe this is us. And then we play a team in the top six. And then after, I think it might be you pointed out, Stephen, when you look at like a group of 12 games, the teams in the bottom six were beaten. The teams in the top six we can't take points off of. And this is kind of what I feel just now, like Jablonec, Dundee and Hearts, right? They're bottom six level, SPFL. So we're performing really well against them. But it says to me the model works. And if you get the players in, you get the better players in, then it stands to reason that the manager obviously knows what he's doing. So give them the better players and we'll perform much better against the better teams.
The one thing I would say about the opposition is that I agree with you. I agree with the overall quality of those oppositions. But purely on the circumstances of this, Hearts beat Celtic 2 weeks ago or something like that. And I think that's very much down to circumstances. I say same with Midtjylland. I think these teams are beating Celtic right when they're down, basically, right when the perfect stage of their development. It's like years ago, to use a fighting comparison, Conor McGregor beat Dustin Poirier when Poirier was just starting out, but now that the two of them are kind of in their athletic peak, Poirier has come back and smashed McGregor twice. So it's like I feel like that's like Celtic are coming up while these teams are beating them, but we're just not quite ready for them.
See, and just on that, see if we were playing Midtjylland during the week instead of Alkmaar, we'd beat them over the 2 legs, wouldn't we?
100%. That's exactly what I'm getting at. So I think these games have just caught us on the wrong foot a wee bit, and that's down to what was discussed a number of times, the ill preparation for name of my next album, by the way, ill preparation, but the poor setup of this season. Now that's gone, it's done. There's nothing we can do about it now, unfortunately, but we're getting better, as has been demonstrated by the Hearts game, because as I say, that team went out and fairly handily beat Celtic just a couple of weeks ago, where they blew them away again, absolutely blew them away.
It's interesting, Millie, to see a lot of players, they're now starting to come up to speed with the way Ange is working, and I'm looking at the bench the other day and I'm like, well, Near Bitton, we kind of know what to expect from Near Bitton, we can forget about him, but looking at Soro and Ayeti, especially Albion Ayeti, we'd kind of written him off. I think we'd called him a flop a couple of weeks ago. We just sort of said, well, he's not really going to come back, but he's sort of maybe just taking a wee bit longer to get integrated into Ange's team. Do you think he could become an option for us?
I'd like to think so, because you want these players to be good. We paid a lot of money for him. He came with a decent pedigree as well, and you've seen that he can score goals. That's not really been in question. It's everything else. It just doesn't look like he's ready to put in the work. But again, if he's being brought off the bench, it shows that he must be doing the work, because Ange wouldn't play him if he wasn't. So it'd be nice if he could get fit and firing, because the man that we always describe as fit and firing, Lee Griffiths, isn't going to get back to that level again. I think we can all accept that.
Contract is looking more and more peculiar by every week that passes, isn't it?
I don't think anything could be more of a panic decision I think it's written all over it. We were running
You've got a good
around.
record of giving boys contracts. You were all saying the same about Tony Ralston.
That's very true. I'd like to take that back. This is an official issued apology to Tony Ralston for that chat at the start of the season. But I mean, I can't even be bothered talking about Griffiths, but I think to look back on it now, that came when nobody knew anything that was going on. That was when we were running about our arses on fire. Like, we've got no players, everybody's leaving, all the loans have expired. Griffiths, I just gave him a contract. He scored goals in the past, and I don't know, it seems like an absolutely crazy decision. Ayeti though, I'm willing him to do well. I don't really see an awful lot from him. I think hopefully if he comes in, well, I'll say what about it's slightly different circumstances because he was more experienced and more expensive than Klimala. But what I said about Klimala at the time is, see if he gets 8-10 goals this season, I'll consider that a relative success if he's kind of in and around the team, backing up either Edouard, Furuhashi, a combination. Maybe someone new will come in. If he plays 20 games this season and gets 10, 12 goals, fine. You know, it's not great for what the outlay on a player like that was, but we're kind of stuck with what we've got at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a long contract, and he's got to be looking. I mean, he's not everyone's necessarily going to be a Lee Griffiths or dare I say a bowling goalie. I mean, these two guys look as if they're just not really seeing the future at Celtic anymore. No. Whereas I'll be Nageti, might think, do you know what? I might as well take a crack at it because it's a long time he's been out of the game. Relatively speaking, he didn't have much of time at West Ham, then came up last year and didn't do much for us.
It's one of those, like, you really want this guy to do it, but we've seen at the start of the season, he started in pre-season. And
Captaincy in pre-season.
Edouard came back in and he's fell out, and now you've got Kyogo and you go, well, Kyogo's a much better player. So, but again, it's wee bit of injuries here and there. We've seen Abada miss out, we've seen Christie miss out recently, Forrest been injured, Mikey Johnson, Dembele. We need plenty of options up there because we're going to get injuries. There's going to be times we need to give players a rest. So if we could get him going, it would be great to have, because I think he could be a good goal scorer. But the longer it goes on without him starting games, the harder it's going to be for him.
Next up was Hearts. A bit of revenge, as you said, Stephen. They kind of got us at the right time. Well, they got us at the wrong time this weekend. Oh,
boy, did they. That was a perfect opportunity to go out and settle a few scores, right a few wrongs. The Cup's important. The Cup's going to be important this year because we were absolutely dreadful in them last season. Absolutely dreadful. Put it in the huge pile of competitions that we were pishing last season. The League Cup is another one of them. But to get Hearts at this very early stage was quite opportune. I thought it was quite a good time because not only was it, as I say, got the opportunity to right a few wrongs, but it's quite a good test, seeing as they've already beaten us. So to go out and completely blow them away in the first half hour as well. Hearts were, I mean, as I say, I can only chalk it up to Celtic having not been ready for the first one because I watched that Hearts team and I was like, this is terrible, absolutely dreadful. It was just like, I mean, it's nothing new for a Celtic point of view, but to watch a team sit in as much as that was criminal. It's tragic to watch. They've got a couple of decent players. That banging gimme, forgive me if I'm butchering that, but I think I'm pretty sure I've absolutely nailed that. I'm sure
I'll let you know next week if you have.
banning gimme
still doesn't sound like a word.
No, I'm just making nasal noses, nasal sounds with my nose. But, he was a cracking player. He turned up and looked great in the first game. But they've got a couple of decent players in there. But by and large, their style of play is absolutely brutal. So I'm glad that was no obstacle whatsoever. Just went out and blew them away again. Because sometimes you can see, I mean, under Neil Lennon, you could see teams sitting in like that and we just make an absolute laboured chore of it, where we're just passing back and forward and then shooting for 35 yards. But that wasn't the case at all. Just broke them down, systematically broke them down, and rolled over the top of them, really.
Melly, that front three, when Celtic came out, I might have said this in the podcast last week, I definitely had the discussion, do you think we could see a Yeti, Edouard and Furuhashi up front? And that was kind of poo-pooed. But we got Jamesy Forrest, Odson Edward, Jedward. We got Jedward up front with Furuhashi. And when I saw Edward's name in the team sheet up beside Furuhashi, I thought, God, this could be a really exciting partnership.
Yeah, we've only seen him. Well, he came on against Hearts in the first game and he went out left, but we've seen him right through the middle since then. We always wondered how him and Edouard may be doing. I think
Packy Bonner's doing the Google lineups, by the way.
Is it Edward?
Is Edward again?
I wondered if it would have an effect on Edouard's performance, because having Furuhashi there, putting in the work, putting in all the pressing, you can't stand there beside a guy and see him doing that and then not give 100%
Yeah.
as well. It's infectious in the crowd and the rest of the players. So it was good to see that. Forrest sort of coming in slowly but surely as well. He's got a couple of goals now and all that. So look, it's one or two changes within Celtic, but the same style, the same pace, the same intensity. It's brilliant to watch. In that first half hour, like Stephen said, Hearts sat in, and we've seen it last season. It's going to be a stodgy game where we're probably going to try and nick a goal for somewhere. But for a team that sat in, we still ripped them apart and found space, and that is down to the players' movement and speed of thought and speed of play.
Well, that's what I was going to say, because, again, very early days, but you're watching a team sitting against us like Hearts and absolutely munched them. Just tore right through them. They didn't know what to do.
John could play anywhere, even in the Premier League. Suter didn't have a clue what to do against us.
Right. And I'm thinking to myself, other teams must be watching this, because they very quickly figured out how to play against Neil Lennon's team, right? Other teams must be watching this going, right, so sitting in doesn't work. And we certainly don't have the players to go toe-to-toe with them. How do we come up with a solution for this?
Derek McInnes will be sitting at home going, I know, man marking, lads, you've overlooked that.
Kick them. Now, we're going through teams like hot piss through snow.
A chilling image, I'm sure you'll agree. Hot piss through
I was
snow.
cornered and I had to come up with something.
Celtic are the piss in this obscene analogy. Jesus. But no, I don't know how teams are. Frankly, it's not our problem to care about how teams are going to somehow negate this Celtic team when they're flying like that. Maybe it is just a case of hoping that they'll tire themselves out, hoping that Celtic will somehow punch themselves out in the first half an hour and then try and take advantage. But no such luck. Conceded a couple of goals, of course, in this, but that kind of goes back into the debate over, we just need a stronger defence, quite frankly, at the end of the day. But it was so comfortable. The biggest problem that Hearts had was Michael Stewart in commentary. Michael Stewart had a mad one. He had an absolute mad one. One of the goal, that Welsh's goal. So it was a short corner taken to Edward, and Edward turns, crosses it for Welsh to majestically leap it and head home. Michael Stewart talked himself into like a 2-minute breakdown about how that should have been offside because they took the corner and played it forward. And I'm like, has he lost his mind? That's completely impossible. And then I think he must have had a producer in his ear telling him, what are you talking about?
Michael, you're talking piss. This is absolute piss you're talking. So find a way out of this.
You can't be offside from a corner, but Michael Stewart just started farting on about it anyway. But
the only man that actually says should have.
Yeah. Could have and should have.
Should have and could have. He actually says that. Just to go back a wee bit, Melly, on your point about Odsonne Edouard, and Ryan Christie kind of falls into this camp a wee bit for me as well. The players must have sat last year and thought, where's this club going? We go for Brendan Rodgers to Neil Lennon. We're getting pummeled left, right and centre. We're no winning games. They're out of every competition. There's a malaise about it, but they must have been looking at going, where is this going? And,
sorry to jump in, and they've gone out and appointed an absolute no-mark yes man from Japan and all. That was the perception at the time. This guy's a bold puppet and all that.
There would have been a bit of like, Odsonne Edouard and maybe Ryan Christie, the boys would speak to Tom Roderick and find out what the new incoming manager's like. But there will be a bit of what's going on? And there's the Eddie Howe thing was a disaster, and they're just like, what's going on here? And then slowly they start to see, maybe there's something about this manager, and Roderick starts saying, and they're talking to their pals in the game that are aware of him, and they're going, no, there's maybe something about this guy. And then we start to bring in, we're starting to bring in Furuhashi. The players, Ryan Christie and Odsonne Edouard, guys that play with Furuhashi, I've not seen a player plays the way Furuhashi plays football at Celtic for a long time. The relentless energy, the quality in his finishing, his passing, everything is just relentless and top quality. And I'm like, I've never really seen a player in the mould of that, and I'm trying to think who's comes close, and I'm not really sure yet, but they must look at this guy and go, okay, well maybe this club is going somewhere. We're bringing in good players. We've just signed Starfeld for Ruben Kazan for £5 million. Now he's had a bit of a patchy start, but he's an expensive, experienced player, so these players might be going, do you know what, there's maybe something worth hanging about for here. At least it's re-energised them. I think we're not doing it all ourselves, because we know footballers are always curious about what other players are coming into the club. Who am I going to be playing alongside here?
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah,
it's a big issue, and I'm thinking now maybe just this wee bits of quality. Excuse me, wee bits of quality left and right coming in. The squad has maybe revitalised a player like Edward, because he looked right on it.
He did. He looked good, and I think it just sort of goes back to something Stephen touched on last year. Where under Neil Lennon, what we always spoke about was there wasn't a style of play. There was no definitive style of play for Celtic. If it went wrong, the players had to do better because they're good players. They should go out and win these games. Whereas Celtic have got a clear style. Everybody knows their jobs. Everybody knows what they're doing, and they're doing it. And they're doing it well, and it just feeds into everybody else. Like Ryan Christie is made for a Furuhashi team.
Well, he kind of is.
Furuhashi's team.
He's made for an Ange Postecoglou team, and like, Odson Edwards are that good a player. If you put him in this system, he can do well because he is top quality, and we've seen that from the goal, the front three, even the pass through from Turnbull before it gets to Kyogo takes out a load of players. The outside of the foot from Kyogo across the forest.
See when he played the outside, I was sitting in here, right, watching that outside of the foot pass for Kyogo, and this is what you heard.
And even when it gets to Forest, he has a look up, and Edward busting his neck to get in there and just taps it home. Like, there's nobody that can live with that, and if Celtic can put these chances on a plate for Edward, he will score them. It's when he's running himself and tries to beat 3-4 players that he looks bad. But if we can be that incisive and get through, Edward can thrive in this team. Whether he's here or whether he goes, it doesn't really matter now. We've got Kyogo there. It's all about if it's up to what happens to him. But if he stays, I'd be happy enough. If he goes with my best wishes now, because I don't think we can say he's no interested, because he's looked good in the times he's played recently.
Andy Hardy had a good game.
Another half for Andrew.
When the second half,
he's been subbed at half time twice again, hasn't he?
See, when the second half started and Andy Halliday wasn't there, I was like, oh, wait a minute, guys, something's wrong. We need to stop the half. Andy Halliday hasn't turned up. Let's just make sure he's okay, because there's no way he's been taken off at half time. I refuse to believe that.
The sub came on, because obviously Halliday didn't come out, so we didn't know who was off, and the Hearts change. Off goes Andy Halliday. Hey.
Did Ralston do him a cracker?
Kyogo did as well, and
Furuhashi nailed him, an absolute belter. See, just on that, I remember a couple of seasons ago when we did our bold predictions for the season, Christie was in really great form, and I predicted them to get double figures in goals, assists and bookings.
Yes.
Kyogo's starting to get into that kind of mode of things. He's very, very enthusiastic. Maybe a little bit...
He'll get sent off this season.
Oh, 100%. And it's maybe just a little bit of over-exuberance, because... I mean, it's going to happen, playing in front of that kind of crowd.
But do you know what? As long as it's even, because this is a rough league, and he's going to get it.
Yeah.
So as long as the refs, see if the refs are prepared to, give him a booking for the odd rash tack. It needs to be both. It needs to be both ways, because he's going to get. They're going to try and ragdoll him.
Yeah, even that Halliday one's a very specific example. But the one against Jablonec, where he got booked because he committed 2 fouls basically in the space of about 10 yards. He pulled someone's jersey and then committed a foul at the end of it as well. That's a little bit just ill discipline, just getting a wee bit carried away. Stephen Welsh is still a little bit rash as well. He's got himself into a couple of needless bookings recently as well.
Sorrow as well.
Yeah, Sorrow big time. But that'll calm down. I'm sure Furuhashi will settle into it, and he'll get a little bit more accustomed to his surroundings, because he's going to receive a lot. He's going to get a lot. Let's face it, he's going to get kicked up and down the park in this country, and he'll receive no protection whatsoever. There's your conspiracy chat there. Let's have in the comments, Huns. There's your talking point for this week. But it's bound to happen, and he's given it a little bit back, which is good to see. But there's no doubt he'll eventually get about 10 or 12 bookings this season.
Just on Kyogo, and everything about him, when he gives away fouls, when he doesn't get a foul, everything about him is so enthusiastic. I've never seen somebody come in and just become an instant hero like this at Celtic Park. Like, every time he's doing something, he misses a chance or that, or he was geeing up the crowd a wee bit during the week and at the weekend there, and you're just like, everybody has completely bought into this guy in a matter of weeks. Like, just, it's unbelievable to watch. He's so good, so enthusiastic, and when you put all that together, and just he seems like a likeable wee guy, it is incredible to watch, because all that there. And he's absolutely dynamite at football.
Yeah, yes. See, the goal he got chopped off the other night against Jablonec, where it was marginally.
Can't he disallow? He's too nice.
I know, it's marginally offside, but when it went in, it was a lovely finish as well. Having seen it back, he stood there before it got chopped off. I'd spotted the flag quite early on, unfortunately, but before it was clear that he'd been chopped off, he kind of just stood there. He stood there. It was almost like the Cantona thing. He just kind of stood there and let the crowd just bask in it. And I was like, this guy, he's just. he's got absolute hero written all over him. And he's only played a few games, but yeah, I mean, it's almost like the opposite of the Starfelt conversation we'll probably end up having tonight. But it's like you don't want to judge a player after 2 games. But that would be crazy to say that about Furuhashi. Oh, don't judge him because he might be crap after this. But I mean, brilliant.
You mentioned it, might as well bring it up. Starfelt has come in. We were kind of encouraged by his arrival because Aya was going out. We thought, okay, we went and bought a ready-made replacement. He's had a bit of a shaky start, hasn't he?
The Jablonec game, I thought, was his best game so far. Then the Hearts game, I don't know, there's just something about him where you just think he's going to make a mistake. I don't know if it's just he's working his way up, but he's played enough games now. They have all been in quick succession, so it might be just getting used to his surroundings and all that. But there is wee doubts about him. He's sort of passing. He looks a bit lax sometimes. He's got a weird technique. But when he gives away the penalty for the Hearts one, I can't remember Joe Hart making a save. I can't remember Hearts having a chance where he thought, oh, they might get back into this game. And it was just a silly one to give away that allowed them back into the game when 2-0. It should have been 4 or 5 to Celtic. They were that good. And it gave Hearts a wee edge back into the game when really they didn't have anything. It's just, Stephen said it earlier, we just need better defenders. But that goal wasn't anything to do with MD apart from Starfelt. It was just a lapse in concentration where he should know somebody could nick in here. He has to be thinking quicker on his feet. So look, Hearts get back into the game and got a last-minute goal, but they didn't really deserve to score in the game, and to give a goal away like that is pretty poor. Hopefully it was better for him in the long run because that's his mistake. He learns from it and moves on. But good game. Then a not so great game. I want to see a bit more consistency from him.
I think I've been fairly generous with him the few weeks he's been here. I think was it maybe last week I described him as he looks a little bit shaky, but he's heavily involved. He's got a lot of the ball, and then it was he's quite shaky, but he looks to make quite crisp, incisive passes. And then it was like he's quite shaky, but and now it's becoming he's just a little bit shaky. He just looks quite uncomfortable. I wondered if it was maybe just his running style or his gait or something that makes him just look a wee bit cumbersome. But he just looks quite uncomfortable. And I saw a little bit of chat on some Celtic forum or other where they speculated that he just doesn't belong on the left. And I was like, well, I find that.
How much does that matter sometimes?
It probably does to an extent, but I would find it implausible that Celtic would go out and find a guy and immediately just bring him in and play him in the wrong position.
Yeah, so he played there for Ruben.
Exactly. So I would find it baffling if Celtic went out and got a guy completely unsuited for the position and forced him into it. Incidentally, Christopher Ayer playing centre-half for Brentford in their win over Arsenal. They've missed a trick there.
Honestly, they need to, there's a couple of Celtic dads on Twitter that the Brentford scouting machine nearly get in touch with because he's a midfielder. I can't believe they're making that same mistake. Do you think Ayer for Starfelt, do you think it's a serious drop in quality, Melly?
Well, I think that it is a drop in quality, but I don't think that's any sort of slight on Starfelt, just because Christopher Ayer was a really, really good player for Celtic, and I think he'll probably get a higher ceiling than Starfelt. He is younger than him, so I think Ayer was a really good player. I still think maybe Julian, or if we bring in another centre half, might help as well, but if over the past 3 games since he's come in, Stephen Welsh has looked more assured than him. He just slotted back in, and that's maybe one thing you can say about Ange is, why did you bring Beaton back in for those games? Because it doesn't look the smartest.
Maybe not, but maybe Beaton was due. I did think about this when I've seen the Stephen Welsh performances recently, and I think I might put it down to new manager comes in, Beaton is an experienced senior player, and
it's the only thing it could really be.
And he's like, right, well, I'll go with him, but credit to Ange. Almost as soon as everyone noticed it wasn't working, it stopped.
Yeah.
If that was Neil Lennon, Neil Lennon would go on Twitter, see people don't want Beaton playing, and then make Beaton the captain the next game, just to get it up everybody.
Yeah, the Starfelt thing. I want to be very clear about this. In the interest of balance, it is early days. We're not making any lasting or
played at a decent level.
Yeah, so. Exactly. No, we're not making any final judgments on him. We're simply talking about the first few games from him, which haven't been particularly convincing. He could settle in. I talk about guys coming in. Abada hit the ground running, so did Furuhashi. That's kind of bad luck for Starfelt in that he's probably going to be compared to these guys in a completely different position, because we've had defenders in the past who took a wee while to get going. Van Dijk was one of them. Needless, and Ayer took a couple of seasons before he was up to speed. A wee bit younger, of course, but guys like Boyata, I mean, we don't often get defenders who come in and look world class straight away. So I'm perfectly happy to give him a chance. It's just we kind of need to call it as we see it at the moment, and he hasn't been convincing for the last game or so.
Cal McGregor, captain.
Skipper, aye.
What about that? When the camera focused in him, was that the Jablonec game? We've got everyone around this table has a different pronunciation of that team, so I cannot wait till we never have to talk about them again. Definitely said they're out there for us, so we in there for them. I think he might have said
fruity language in there as well.
Get into the. I don't know if I can say that. So he's really taken to this captain's role, Cal McGregor has, and I was. Again, Stephen referencing you. All your best material comes pre-pod. All Stephen's best material comes pre-pod. You said like you've not really missed Scott Brown as captain. There was like worries about influence and all these things that he. I mean, again, early days throughout the season, there might be a few games where people go, "We need," but I have no concerns whatsoever about Cal McGregor. He has grown in stature with that captain's armband on him.
Are you saying I'm basically the podcast equivalent of a good trainer, but don't turn up in the big games?
Yeah, you're the John Kennedy of this podcast. Oh no, I misunderstood your joke. It's okay though.
No, he has grown into it, and it's as we were talking before we turned the mics on. It was like it's amazing how quickly you adjust to any player leaving. I mean, you obviously kind of miss them, especially with Scott Brown's record and the amount of appearances he made and the amount of trophies he's won. It goes without saying, but it's amazing how quickly you adjust to just them not being there. And I feel like no one's really even mentioned Scott Brown. It's like even when we made the ropey start to the season, I don't think there was anyone really going to say you should never let Scott Brown go or something. So I think everyone by and large is quite accepting of the fact that it's Cal McGregor's team now.
Would Scott Brown get in that midfield three?
No.
Who wouldn't he be playing?
No, definitely.
James McCarthy get a game ahead of him as well, wouldn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's testament to Callum McGregor that I mean, not everyone's going to like that he's the captain now, because I think there was some chat about how he's not vocal enough. So I hope that video that was doing the rounds kind of puts paid to that idea. He's
very vocal. He's on the pitch. I was watching him in the European game. He was really vocal, telling people to be careful, calm down. He was dictating play from the middle of the park.
As we've said before, there are different types of leaders. Now, Scott Brown had it busting out of every pore of him. Like he was like the absolute embodiment of it. But Callum McGregor can be more subdued, more subtle than that, but still command the respect of his teammates and the management, and that's the important thing. Not the looking like he gives like every single the whole Scott Brown thing. He doesn't have to do that in order to be an effective leader. So he's been brilliant. Not only that, not only is he like the leader, the Mr. Celtic on the pitch now that Scott Brown's gone. He's just a brilliant footballer, and it's just absolutely tremendous. And I know he didn't play particularly well last season, but no one did. So I think we can basically just write that off. But the start of the season he's had now, I think he's looked absolutely terrific. And quite aside from the Scott Brown debate, to me there has been almost nothing out there about how we need a physical dominant central midfielder in there. We need like a big defensive. Maybe, yeah.
It might come.
I mean, I wouldn't be against it, because we need options. We need different types of players for different roles.
will be that role, won't he?
Yeah, but no one has been screaming out for we need a Wanyama in there and that, because you do. Let's face it, it would be nice. But Callum McGregor has taken up on that role, which nothing about Callum McGregor suggests like dominant central defensive midfielder. But he's effective in other ways, extremely effective in other ways, and he can play a variety of roles in there. But it's his midfield now, and I'm glad he's taken to it.
Just on that, when I was doing the reaction with Paul from Celtic Fans TV, he turned it on me and asked me what I think Cal McGregor's. But do I prefer him in the 6 or just that wee bit further forward in the 8? And it didn't really matter to me. He's brilliant in both. What would you say?
I prefer him, just the way I prefer my footballers. I like him a wee bit more back with the game in front of him, and the 6 being the fulcrum, always accepting, dictating the play for the back.
I'm not sure. I think he's brilliant at that position. Maybe I think there's going to, with Ange, we've seen already, there's going to be different things he does going by different opponents in these games. Home games against teams we're expected to beat, I think Cal McGregor could play in there, but during the week, maybe Alkmaar, I think he'll maybe bring in McCarthy or Sorrow and change it up. But I think Cal McGregor, we've seen at the start of the season when he was playing in number 8, he contributed goals, he was getting forward a lot more, and he can do that. But looking at it, Tom Rogic, you're not going to get a season out of him. We can't. No. We know from him we can't rely on him to play every week, so we're going to need options in there. But 8 or 6, he plays 8 or 6 and he plays a 9 out of 10 every week.
We'll see if Callum McGregor was on one of those Soccer AM videos where they're doing the crossbar challenge or whatever. They go out and remember the Soccer
Oh my
goodness
God,
me,
man.
how very 90s that was.
Awful.
But if they come forward, talk to Callum and give their position, Callum McGregor would just say, Callum McGregor, footballer.
Yes, everywhere.
Do you remember Neil Lennon's when he done that?
Neil Lennon hungover?
Yeah.
Obviously. There we go. You mentioned it, Melly. Alkmaar now a couple of weeks ago. It was a foregone conclusion that we were going to get put out by Alkmaar. That was oh God, we're never going to make it. This is why we should have beat Midtjylland. Alkmaar are coming up, and Alkmaar are a strong team. Finished third in the league last season. They played one league game this season already. They haven't won it. How do you feel a couple of weeks on with AZ Alkmaar on the horizon?
I'm really looking forward to it. I think a couple of weeks ago you're going, oh no, we could be conference. But with this one, it's like, do you know what, Celtic, as you spoke about, we haven't played that many good teams yet. This will be the test. I want to see how Celtic do against this team, but I'm not going into this with any fear. I think we'll have to respect them. I think it'll be a hard game. And look, Celtic might not win the tie. They might go out. But I think that will just be because Alkmaar are a bit more prepared than Celtic. Again, if we got them in the group stage or whatever down the line this season, I think we could beat them. But the game's there. We have to go and play our game. And look, the way Celtic play, we're going to create chances. So it's about taking them. It's just the defence still leaves a wee bit of worry. But every game now, I'm excited about going to see Celtic. And that's all I can ask. That's all I can ask.
Just on the preparation, Stephen, I would like to see us a bit more prepared. You know, I know you can only do so much to influence transfers. Ange has been saying after the last two games how much he needs the players in and how he's looking for. You know, we had right back on loan from Man City. We tried to get right back on loan from Man City. He was at the Jablonec game. Jan Kuto, I think his name was. All accounts as we record this, he sort of decided he doesn't want to do that.
After getting a free VIP treatment as well, absolutely.
We could all do that, Jan. We're working on other targets and all that, and that's it. Again, I'm just looking at this game and I think, see if we were just a wee bit more prepared, we probably would stand a better chance. But you know, we've got to play the cards we've been dealt.
Well, there's another way to say that, and I'll refrain from doing it.
Now, so I'm trying to avoid it. And also, I've already made the joke along those lines earlier on today. So
yes, the increased level of performance in the last couple of games has, covered a multitude of sins, mainly the transfer stuff. It's kind of taken the focus away from that. And just still talking about it publicly, about how he needs players in, but we're all high on life talking about how great this attacking formation is, how great the first half of this game was, how great this goal was. We've kind of taken our eye off the ball with that a wee bit. Meanwhile, if the performances hadn't been quite as good, we might have been talking about, I can't believe we've not got a right back in at this time yet. So there's definitely that. With Ange having spoken so publicly about it, he expects one or two in at this point. That seems to have fallen by the wayside, right? So that's probably back to not quite good enough. I agree with Melly on this game. I think I'm only concerned about where Celtic are in their development yet. Jamie, you've been saying all along that we've not been playing the best of opposition to be. What's important to acknowledge here is that the way Celtic have been blowing these teams away, we're not just flat track bullying them. It's not like the style of play and the manner in which we've been beating these teams is important. But I do agree that it's not the greatest of tests. We might come up against Alkmaar and find what we found against Midtjylland, what we found against Hearts. We just weren't quite ready for it. That's my only concern going in, because Celtic are playing an awful lot better at the moment. Whether we see those old concerns or those old weaknesses reveal themselves again, because those guys are just, they're no world beaters, they're not they're not PSG or anything like that, but they might be a little bit better off in terms of their preparation for the game, not in terms of fitness, not in terms of competitive games played, but just by having a more settled team, perhaps. Those are my only concerns about going in.
It's sort of no harm, no foul. We never expected at any point to get past Alkmaar. We're a wee bit more prepared, we're a wee bit further on. The team's a wee bit further down the line. I'm expecting us to perform a lot better than I first did. I thought it was just going to be a foregone conclusion for Alkmaar and they would just breeze right through us. But it's good. I think it's going to be an entertaining game. I think it's back to actual full house at Parkhead. Back to Parker's.
That'll get us taken off YouTube probably. The algorithm is just cancelled itself.
Back to Parker's for a full house against Alkmaar, and this is what the feel good factor is back about the club now, and it's amazing how quickly things turn around. We just need to keep the board just need to give Ange the tools to do this job. That is the priority now. he needs to get the players in that he wants.
In a sense, the board must be raging that we're so fully behind Ange already. They must be, oh God, we better get a move on here because the fans, we should have put Lennon back in and they would have been fighting with the manager instead of us now. But I mean, I've never. There's obviously been Tommy Burns and all that in the past, and Brendan Rodgers, Martin O'Neill, but the amount of buy-in from the fans, because this is in the social media age, of course, whereas not all of them were, but the amount of people who are just fully behind Ange already, so that's all it does is heap pressure on the board.
Even people that we've got I've got a few mates or a couple of people in the Discord who have put in apologies and said, look, I'm on board now. The way Celtic are playing, it's the best we've watched in a long time. So the fans are completely behind this. That it's going to be rocking on Wednesday night. It's going to be as full as it can be, whatever it is, with seats we need to give up or whatever that. But the disco lights will be on. The atmosphere on Thursday night was absolutely brilliant. Everybody back, even in Sunday there, the place was bouncing at some points because of the way Celtic were playing, and it's going to be like that again on Wednesday night. I just can't wait. And look, that'll spook Alkmaar as well, because it will happen. At some point, teams will go, hold on a minute, and it's good to see all of this in there and coming together, because it's been a long time coming last season not getting to the games, but even if we had it, they were crap to watch. Now we're there and it's brilliant to watch, and if Celtic go out, it will be down to the fact that they just aren't good enough at this point, probably.
And on that, seems like a terrific place to wrap up. Thank you so much to everyone who's tuned in the last couple of weeks. Honestly, the reception this season has been great. All the comments and the YouTube are great. So
some of them aren't.
Some of them are.
We're going to be walking a line tonight, I reckon, with Parkers and a couple of the Hun conspiracy theories and all that. I reckon
the Huns in the chat love it. The Huns in the chat love it. Look, if you like this podcast and you want to see some more video and podcasts from us, patreon.com/20minutetims. That's how the wheels keep rolling on this melee. Would you like to say goodbye?
Goodbye.
Stephen, would you like to say goodbye?
Yes, I'm going to do it to camera for once. Goodbye.
Thank you for watching and listening.